Hi, it's Felipe, and I just wanted to take some time as we get to know each other at the beginning of this workshop to introduce a little bit more about how Elizabeth and I came to this work, introduce the economy of Francesco, particular a few words around soul, solidarity, and structure, a little bit of the distinctiveness of the contribution we're hoping to make with this workshop that might help you understand this module and guide you to what we're hoping to do in the next couple parts as well. At the core, it's about being protagonists of the transformation that we're seeking. So I'll start with a little bit of my own story. I came to this work with a frustrating experience in June of 2008. It was the first week on my job. I was fresh out of college. I remember coming to this all staff meeting. It was Friday, mid-morning, and the CEO tells us that 10%, 27 of the 200 colleagues were going to be let off that afternoon. And it was just horrific because people I was most looking forward to working with on my clean energy team were part of that group. And it was done so poorly, some situation that we see so often repeated in corporate America, that led me to start asking questions about how could business be more humane? And I got to know some of the thoughtful leaders of that organization over time, and they're very caring, ethical leaders. So what makes them lead this decision that and do it in such a way that can feel so heartless? And aren't there consequences for these kinds of leaders that maybe don't make decisions? And I realized is they were just being accountable to shareholders. They were being accountable to capital interests. And a concept I want to introduce is capital supremacy. I think at its core, workers, customers, producers, communities, all are subordinate in our dominant corporate structure to capital's interests. So capital supremacy is a core of our problem. And a solution that we'll introduce in this conversation today in this first prompt and describe some of the examples in module 2 is capital reciprocity. How as capital stewards do we show up in reciprocal relationship to other stakeholders, whether that's our producers, suppliers, or customers, or even the commons, or future generations. There's a great book called The Good Ancestor about intergenerational solidarity. What if we were in true solidarity across generations, across time, in the way that our, Catholic institution has tried to do over time? So I became pricked my conscience in this experience in June 2008 I was describing to you. And that led me to be asking this question about how could we structure things differently? How could we have reciprocal relationship between stakeholders that might lead to different kinds of more humane business? And in as an operator in kind of conventional business settings, I was looking for more spiritual conversion myself. I realized that to respond to the significant questions of the poor and the earth of our time, I wanted, I realized my life, my contributions weren't going to be that significant if I was being honest with myself. And so I realized it required God. It required a belief in something much bigger. It required my own participation in a much bigger economy, in God's economy. And it also required my participation with institutions. And I think many in my generation have defected from institutions. But as I think about the organizations that most shape me, it's my experience going abroad to Latin America and being shaped by Jesuits and other religious orders down there. So the Catholic Church is an example of one extremely powerful institution that many of us are very connected to. And finally, it's about good friends and companions who we can be vulnerable with, who can check in, who can hold us to the best version of ourselves. And in these desire for these things, I was so fortunate to come across a small spirituality group with Elizabeth, Colin, and a few others. And we started gathering regularly. And when the invitation came in 2009 for the Economy of Francesco to give a soul to the economy, I got so excited about what might be possible. And that pushed me to ask questions of what does Catholic social teaching have to say about this? And that's a little bit about what we describe in another the 22-minute presentation we share about Rerum Novarum and Laudato Si and the principles that come out. And what do bold principles for impact investing look like? How do we structure this? How do we fairly balance risk and return between investors, entrepreneurs, and communities? How do we add more value than we take? The principle of non-extraction. How do we engage communities, give them the dignity to design, govern, own together? Embodying what I call, I think the core for me of Catholic social teaching is the structured commitment to neighbor love or mutuality. So that's all fine and well, you're probably thinking, but as capital allocators, I have my fixed income portfolio, I have my large capital equity manager, and I have my small cap manager, and I'm trying to increase my private equity. I have some real assets here. These are the questions I hear from some of you. So how do we take action to structure neighbor love into business? And so what's distinct about what we're going to try to offer in this workshop and in this module is that we need to lean into the edge. And the more we lean into the edges, I think we can see and shed light on how we come back to all the questions. So we're going to push into the most embodied examples of CST investing that we know. And that's a lot of what Module 2 is about, is mapping that rich ecology of practical alternatives that we've begun to discover. But we recognize we're just two leaders here amongst all of you. And I think we have Mercy Investments, Ascension, Anthos, Adesina. We have some of the pioneers of ESG and divestment and shareholder advocacy and values-based investing here with us in this cohort. So the final thing I want to leave you with here is just an appreciation for who here is with us in this space today and in this workshop. And we have some of the most pioneering impact investors, and we have an opportunity to impact and influence each other. And each of us is on different parts of the journey, and going further together is the most promising part. And so how can we seize the opportunity of this special container, this workshop, to be vulnerable, to ask the questions that are most pricking our conscience, most on our hearts, most desirous of how we restructure the fabric of our economy, and attune ourselves to participate in God's economy.